Today we are going to begin our journey in exploring romantic synastry in Vedic astrology. The synastry is the art of weaving two charts together, seeing if two people are compatible, how they are compatible, where there might be discordances between two people, so we can understand whether or not a relationship can last with someone, maybe even if it is meant to only be for a period of time or for a certain reason. We're able to really see how we are able to affect one another, right? And that's really, really important because when you're entering into a romantic relationship with someone, especially in terms of marriage and long-term relationships, we're really talking about two people becoming one, right? So, that's a very, very profound process, profound state of existence. Whatever is going on with your partner is going to affect you. Whatever's going on with you will affect your partner. Here's a simple example. So if someone has placements in their chart which indicate that they struggle with money, that's a state that they're in. If they're on their own, they don't have a lot of money, right? But then if they marry someone who is very, very wealthy, and that person in their chart says that they're willing to share that wealth with their partner, all of a sudden, that individual has money. So that's a very direct, material, simple way we can get an illustration of how now this person's personal state is affected by the person they choose to be with, right? Now, understanding this, understand it also in that this happens on every layer of being. It happens in terms of emotions. It happens in terms of spiritual development. It happens in terms of intelligence, even, communication. So, for example, say that somebody in their chart is a very generally happy person. They have placements which really support a very positive attitude. They're fun-loving, they're upbeat. And then say, for example, that the partner they choose to be with for a period of time is someone who's very depressed and upset and complains a lot. Well, that's something that's going to affect them emotionally. Even though they have these great placements in their chart for being positive, all of a sudden, this other person's chart, as it merges with them, this other person's energy and state of being, as it merges with them, is going to affect their mood. And vice versa, if you have somebody who is a little depressed, maybe a little insecure, and they are choosing to date someone who's very positive and uplifting and confident, and the harmonies are there in the chart, then that person who's depressed can be uplifted. Their insecurities can be healed through that. So this is one of the amazing things about astrology, synastry, is that we all affect each other and transform each other. And so it's a lot like you're merging these two charts together and you're like, whoa, all of a sudden I am transforming. I am being affected and changed by the condition and state of this person's existence. So say, for example, that someone has a goal in their life to reach a very high level of spiritual development. Say that they want to become one with the divine. They want to increase their spiritual knowledge. They want to raise their spiritual energies, develop themselves so that throughout their lifetimes, they're rising into higher and higher spiritual realms of existence. And say, for example, that they're very good at doing this. The partner whom they choose to be with, if they so choose to have a partner, for the sake of this conversation, we'll assume that this person in the example is choosing that. The person that they choose to be with will greatly affect their spiritual personal journey. So if that person that they're choosing to be with is somebody who is materialistic and someone who's reductionist, someone who's, maybe depressed, or, someone who's kind of willfully negative, right? That's going to put some resistance. It's going to hinder that person's spiritual growth relative to the amount of like tension and resistance that the person's putting on them, right? It's going to affect them. Even if, say, for example, that person still goes off and, does meditation retreats where they're by themselves for periods of time. That connection that they have with that person energetically, spiritually, in their souls, in their spirits, in their energy bodies is still affecting them. All right, so long as they have that energetic bond where you're saying we are married or we are in a committed relationship, the karmas of each person affects one another. So when we're talking about and perceiving synastry through the lens of Vedic astrology, it's so important to understand oneself, one's higher meaning and purpose for being here, and one's partner and their higher purpose and meaning for being here. So we're able to understand all these different ways in which we merge together and to see how compatible that is, right? So, for example, a lot of people, they'll look to Venus really as one of the main things that's looked at in relationships, right? And that's very important. Venus is the significator of relationships, right? Romantic relationships. And so, I think that it's really important to convey this truth that relationships are really seen through the entire chart, not through just one planet, not through just a few different positions. There are when we're talking about being married in particular, but of course long-term relationships and serious relationships, we're talking about merging every layer of our life with this person. Financial, for example. We're talking about our communication, whether or not we're having fun communicating or we feel like we're being heard and understood, our emotional well-being, how we feel about ourselves intrinsically. So many things are influenced and impacted by entering into a long-term romantic relationship with someone, that it's not limited to any few particular places. But of course, in the chart, there are specific things that show specific elements of that relationship. So for example, they say the 7th house is the house of marriage. Yes, indeed, it's the house of marriage. It's specifically the house that has to do with the contracts of that marriage. So when two people come together and we say, okay, I agree that we're in a committed monogamous relationship, and that means that the only person I'm going to have sex with is you, and the only person you're going to have sex with is me. That's actually a contract. So two people can be completely in love with each other and have no contract. And two people can be, not super fond of each other, but they can have a contract and they can fulfill that contract. We had like arranged marriages, for example. Okay. So the 7th house is the house of marriage in the sense that it is the contract which two people form, which is why you have something like Saturn in the 7th house for somebody. That really shows this person is much more likely to be loyal to that contract, to really heed and keep that contract over a long course of time, right? Whereas like Rahu and Mercury, they may have a harder time being pinned down to any type of consistent thing because they're going to like change. They're going to like, doing something new. And, they're not as inclined to one relationship for the rest of my life. That's not to say that someone who has those placements can't do those things. But we're talking about there's many factors in the chart here that play out. So that's the contract of marriage. But you see, a lot of people, when they get into a marriage, most people, especially in the West, they imagine, well, it's meant to be romantic, right? So you're imagining your husband and your wife, you're going out on dates still. You might go to dinner, you might go to the movies, you might go to a lovely park and have a picnic. You might go to a museum or on a trip to some wonderful place somewhere in the world, right? So that kind of romantic, fun, dating, honeymoon energy, you actually see from the 5th house, right? You also see that from Venus. So when we're talking about marriage here, a lot of people talk about 7th house being the house of marriage, true, but you can have a marriage and it not be very romantic, or you can have a very romantic relationship with someone and it not be a marriage. So it's so important to understand that relationships involve our entire being, when we're really talking about the fundamental essence of it. So I feel like when we're talking about synastry, it's so important to know thyself, right? To know thyself in the sense of knowing why you want a relationship. Why? Is it because you want to be taken care of? Is it because you want to be nourished emotionally? Is it because you really like sex? Is it because you want financial support? Is it because you want someone to draw you closer to the divine? There are many reasons why people want to get married. And I feel like it's so important to really contemplate and meditate deeply, very honestly about your specific reasons for why you want to get married, why you want to be in a romantic relationship. Because that will bring the clarity that allows you to recognize and attract a partner who is really right for you as well. And to make sure that you're the type of person who's also able to provide what your partner wants. For example, there could be one person who really wants to get married for financial reasons, and there could be another person who really wants to get married for romantic reasons. And, um, you know, they might both say to each other, well, I love you and I want to get married, right? And that might be where the dialogue is at. I just really love being with you and I want to get married. Um, but without understanding those fundamental reasons, especially over the scope of time as time goes on, you might have some discrepancies emerge. Like what happens if the person who is in the marriage for financial reasons, um, what happens if their partner loses their job or if something happens, you know, then they're not getting their fundamental need met and they get upset and they start, they're like, this marriage isn't working for me. And the other person is like, well, I thought you were in love with me romantically. What's the problem? You just love me for my money, you know? So there's nothing wrong with wanting any of those things. It's just a matter of awareness so you can be with a partner who is okay with it. Like, okay, yeah, like, that's why the seventh house has to do with contracts. Like, okay, well, I'm marrying you for this reason and you're marrying me for this reason. I'm going to make sure that I provide you with this. And therefore, if something happens and I'm no longer able to provide this, at least I understand that that was the reason why we were bonded together, right? So that you understand where issues are coming from and nobody gets confused. This is the same when it comes to romantic stuff too, or when it comes to emotional stuff too. So say, for example, someone gets married and they really want emotional support. That's the reason for getting married. They want kindness. They want compassion. They want to be doted on. They want to just really feel safe and nurtured and cared for in a very energetic, emotional way. Okay? And they say, I love this person. I want to get married. Right? And then say, things are happening in the world and that person's partner is feeling stressed. And, to them in their mind, they just think, well, we're supposed to be in love. And therefore, that person has to kind of put up with the fact that I'm feeling grumpy or that I'm struggling right now. I can't provide as much emotional support or whatever. Um, then that person who is married for the emotional support will feel profoundly neglected. That's the whole reason why they're in the relationship. And so, knowing these things so that we're able to provide what our partner needs, so that we can be very clear and honest with what we need, so that our partner can choose whether or not that's something they're capable of consistently providing for us. That's really key in making a lot of relationships work. So much of relationship chemistry has to do with honesty, a forthcoming type of honesty, to where you're saying like, here's really what my needs are. There might be somebody who, like it takes a kind of radicalness to be like, somebody's like, well, I'm not ready for a marriage right now. Maybe I'll never be ready. Don't lead somebody along. Like, maybe I'll be ready next week. No, just like, I might never be ready for marriage. I'm just someone who kind of wants to date perpetually right now. I don't know when or if that will change. If you just like hanging out with me and you don't want anything serious, let's do that. But if you want something serious, it might be best for you to find somebody who's more serious. You know what I mean? So if you do that, one, your karma will be way better. Because anytime you're like, somebody wants to get married for money and they're like, oh, I just love this person so much. It has nothing to do with finances at all. You end up crinkling your own aura and you end up with karma for that in some way or another. Someone eventually down the line may do something along those lines to you. When you need something, you want something, that person is like, oh yes, I love providing money for people. Really, he's stingy. You know what I mean? He's just like, yeah, no, you should take care of yourself. So just be honest. Okay. If you're honest, a lot of times things will kind of work themselves out. If you're radically honest, you're just like, you know what? I'm in it for this. Here's what I want right now. Here's what I'm capable of providing right now. Here we go. Okay. You can take that or you can leave that. Right. And then just be willing to have the value in yourself to know that as long as you keep being honest and you keep your attraction point good and you're working on yourself in a consistent way, you'll attract the right partner. Partner who's like exactly what you want to provide. That's exactly what I want. I don't need you to provide a bunch of stuff you don't want to provide. I just want what you are offering. That's kind of a good goal to have. And so you can do this through communication. And then also, it's important, like what Vedic astrology allows you to do is to have a greater awareness of self-knowledge, to have a greater awareness of also the state that your partner's in. So there's a lot of people, for example, they might be a bit confused about what it is they really want. They might think they want one thing because they were programmed by religion or society or their parents or something like that to believe that that's what they wanted, but deep down they want something else, and there's a bit of a discrepancy between that. The Vedic astrology and the chart can really show them, oh, actually what I need is this, and I got a little bit confused about what it was I actually needed here. So I can see this now, and you don't have to go through strings of relationships before you finally realize what it is you want and need to feel fulfilled. So this is an introduction, just talking about the it's kind of like relationships in general, really, just like what it means to become one with someone, to merge with someone, and that it's more than just one or a few different placements in the chart. Like, oh, let's just look at Venus and look at the seventh house. It's the whole chart. It's your whole being. You're talking about merging beings, and I think that awareness will really help to open people to understand how important self-knowledge is. And so moving on from here, we're going to be doing, going more into the specific placements in a chart you can look at when it comes to, seeing what you need for yourself in life, what you need from a partner, what your partner needs from you, and talking about where you can find that in the chart specifically. And so there's a lot to look forward to. I'm really, really excited. And if you would like to have a reading from me, you can find my email in the description section below. And I do readings and consultations. I'll probably release a video talking more about, what kind of readings I'm offering and stuff like that in the very near future. But you can just email me at any time and I'll just send you a little description of it in the meantime. So thanks so much for watching. I hope this is helpful. And I look forward to talking with you again soon.